I am Rob Bessett of Milieu Fermentation Company, and this is the Brewer to Brewer podcast from All About Beer. My guest is Sean Buchan of Cerebral Brewing, and he's here for a conversation that goes beyond the brewhouse into topics that matter for professional brewers and curious beer drinkers. First, please visit allaboutbeer.com and follow along social media at All About Beer. And to support journalism in the beer space, check out allaboutbeer.com/support. We'll get into the conversation in just a moment, but first, this message.
Hi, this is Tim Shasha from Berkeley Yeast. Our mission is to give brewers better tools that are affordable and easy to use. Our team has been developing Tropics yeast for nearly 10 years, and we just launched it in a dried format. This is a yeast strain with high thiol biotransformation activity, which means it's great for making tropical forward hazy IPAs. I'll tell you more about how it works later in the show, or you can check the show notes for our recent article called All About Thiols.
Malteurop has long been a pillar of North American malting, and they're growing to meet the needs of the modern brewer. Their brand new warehouse expansion at the Winona, Minnesota Malt House marks a new chapter in their commitment to service and reliability. With increased capacity and optimized logistics at the Winona hub, Malteurop is delivering the quality you expect with the speed you need. Discover the Malteurop difference at malteuropmaltingco.com.
This episode is sponsored by John I. Haas on their new LupoCore Enhanced T90 hop pellets, engineered for peak sensory performance and ultimate peace of mind. Designed for brewers of all sizes, LupoCore delivers consistent sensory outcomes, reliable brewhouse performance, and scalable application across production volumes. Using Sensory Plus selected hops and Haas's advanced pellet processing technology, LupoCore elevates hop expression while reducing brew process loss, all without requiring brewers to change their process. Contact your Haas Sales Representative or visit lupohops.com to learn more.
What if your tanks could tell you everything? Not just where gravity is, but why your fermentation is behaving the way it is. That's SenoSystem, one platform that helps you impact your process, improve your product, and increase your profit, batch after batch. The SenoSystem, which includes the patent-pending Senos M3 in-tank sensor, is the only complete solution for comprehensive fermentation intelligence and management. Built for breweries of every size. Visit senos.com. That's SENNOS.com.
Welcome, and I'm very pleased to have Sean Buchan as my guest today. Sean is the co-founder and CEO of Cerebral Brewing in Denver, Colorado. He earned his doctorate in physical therapy from the University of Colorado in 2010 and practiced as a physical therapist until a few months after Cerebral was founded. Sean homebrewed for years before going pro and was Cerebral's only brewer when he opened the brewery in 2015. It has since grown to 3 locations across the Front Range, with the 4th one on the way in 2027. He also serves on the board of directors of the Colorado Brewers Guild. Welcome, Sean, my friend and neighbor. Good to have you here today. How are things?
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course, brother. So we'll just kick off right away into this. So having transitioned from the medical field myself, I'm really interested to hear what was kind of your deciding factor in transitioning from a career as a physical therapist, which takes a long time to even get to that point, and then deciding to open up Cerebral.
Yeah, a long time, and I think more impactful for me is a lot of debt. Something that obviously you get pretty familiar with as a brewery owner as well. I don't know. It was pretty natural for me. I think the transition into physical therapy was more based on me just not really finding my way before that point. I'd gotten my degree in biology back in Ohio at Wittenberg University, where I met our other founder, Dan. And I really loved the sciences, and I didn't really know what to do with it. And I knew I didn't really have... my brain didn't work the way that it probably should have to get into research, and I knew that wasn't going to be a path for me. So I had done a little bit of volunteering at a PT clinic in town, and that was just, I don't know, it just fit. It was I can help people get better. I can use the sciences that I've already have a background in. There's a little bit of an art to it where you can it's not like you're following an SOP for every single thing. So I got into that, and then quickly realized maybe the patient care side was a struggle for me. And that was what burned me out the quickest, was just the human nature to not necessarily do what's best for you, was tough for me. So it burned me out in the like really within the first 5 years where I was getting competing um, things from management wanted me to be super efficient, and then patients were like not really taking your recommendations. And I was like, what am I doing with my life? Why is this where I'm headed? And around that time, I had friends that gave me a homebrewing kit, and I was like, this is super cool. Like I got into it pretty quick. I'd already been doing some like adjacent work for a local booze blog called Denver Off the Wagon that I started doing photography for. And so I knew a lot of brewers, but I didn't know much about the process. And once I started home brewing, it's like that cliche, got too deep into a hobby, turned it into a business thing. And I don't know, I loved it. And it just kind of exercised all the right muscles in my brain where it was like just that scientific uh purpose and also allowing me to flex some creative muscles I hadn't in a while. And fortunate for me, my wife was more than on board and saw that I wasn't really very engaged or happy in my day job. And then there was, that time after we opened where I was doing both, which is probably the lowest mental health point of my life. Uh, trying to, as you also know, work 40 hours and then come and work another 40 hours. So luckily it worked, but again, it just came down to like it was way more fulfilling. Even if we had failed in the first 5 years, it was a more fulfilling purpose for me than I found in PT.
That couldn't ring more true to kind of my story. It's like it's exactly how I felt. What transitioned me out of medicine as well. I was not a doctor, but was wanting to be, and yeah, it was the same thing. The bureaucracy, uh, patient care is incredibly tough. Nobody likes
Yeah.
homework, so yeah.
Yeah.
But so what was your experience kind of at that genesis of Cerebral? It's like you mentioned you were working kind of both jobs. I was like, that makes sense. It's kind of where I'm at right now, and I think it's kind of necessary at the beginning. So
Mhm.
yeah, what was kind of your experience being an owner and the only brewer for a growing brand?
Yeah, it was like, but we weren't growing then. We were very much like a neighborhood, and we still are a neighborhood spot. That's kind of what our core identity is, but we were very neighborhood focused at that point. And it took us a while to get off the ground. We had a lot of education to do on the styles of beer we were doing. So it was a grind because it was a full day job. I was doing skilled nursing facility care. And then a little bit after we opened, transitioned to home health because it was more flexible. So I was able to kind of do things around what I needed to do at Cerebral. Um, it wasn't as flexible as I wanted it to be, but it was better. And it was tough because I would work the full day job, and the full day job you're thinking about your other job, and especially the way my like hyperfixated brain works. Like I'm really just focused on that, but I'm like taking care of people medically, so I'm like I need to be present here. It was really taxing to be there for those last 6 months, especially. But then I'm also learning what the hell I'm doing on the brewing side because I came from home brewing, and I did everything I could to really learn from the professionals that I knew. And I was really fortunate to come up in the Denver Homebrew Club, and we had some pretty big alums come out of that are still brewing to this day. Some that haven't made it over the past few years, but you're looking at like Nick Nuns of True and Bess, who's a badass brewer at Ratio, and uh, you know, Black Project. Like a lot of local Denver brands came out of that homebrew club. So I got to ask some of them, like, hey, can I shadow you and work with you and figure out what the difference is between my homebrewing kit and what I'm about to brew on? But the thing that really got me the most was that I realized I never trained on cellar. I only trained on hot side, and it was a complete oversight. And I made that was probably where I made some of my biggest mistakes in the first 6 months. We dumped, probably I don't know that I have the exact track of it, probably eight to 10 batches in our first calendar year because we were just so. And there's another one that I wish we would have just from a clarity perspective. But it was a lot. It was very intense, but at the same time, it was one of the most gratifying, intense, like fun experiences of my life. And then we also had our firstborn my daughter was born 6 months after the brewery opened, so it was just a lot going on in my life at the time. But fortunately, it worked. But I remember a few days where I'd be brewing, or sorry, I'd be working as a PT, and then I'd get to the brewery as quick as possible. And our first kettle sour, I didn't know what the timing was going to be like on the kettle, and I just stayed and taking pH readings, and it was 3:30 a.m. that I was running my boil. And it's like, I can't do this. Luckily, I, figured out some other things to make things work more efficiently. And then even though I wasn't getting paid, I just left the PT job after about 6 months of doing both because I just realized I'm doing both pretty poorly. So I needed to exit and also try to be home a little bit.
I love that. So like, when would you say like your growth actually really took off for Cerebral? Like when in the did things kind of start to shift for you guys?
Yeah, we did like we opened in November of 2015, and I think our first calendar year we did like 695 barrels or something close to that. So, pretty small for a 10 barrel brewing system. And then I don't know exactly when it was, but I know a few like points in our trajectory that stand out. And the first one of those being the first barrel aged stout that we released. Our first batch of Here Be Monsters was released in year two, and it's crazy because I never got that recipe to work as a home brewer. I had a pretty definitive goal of what I wanted to accomplish, and then I completely revamped everything for batch one and put it down to rest in some Old Forester barrels we got. It was really just like call up the barrel broker. What do you have? I'll take five of those. Filled them and then blended all five. You know, we did taste through them, but it wasn't like the nuanced blending we're doing now. And we released it, and it was crazy. We had our like a line around the block down into the alley. And then that kind of became the staple for our stout releases for a while. And it was also us figuring out like what the hell's going on? Like why I didn't know people were gonna like this. I didn't know that it was gonna um, ring this true for customers. We were at that point like still very neighborhood focused. So then we have competing interests where we're like, we're probably pissing off the neighbors because we have a line going through the neighborhood. And I think it was really that like year two through five, I think was a lot of that arc. I did a lot of traveling for the brand at that point to try to like stay on top of that. And we were getting invited to all these crazy places, and it was like kind of a whirlwind and that era of beer that doesn't exist anymore where you could do anything and you were still somehow able to make it work. Now,
Yeah.
the things are very, very different, which I think there's pros and cons for. But yeah, I would say it was really like 2017 to 2019 range where it really just kind of felt like we were on this roller coaster that started that we didn't really know how we got on it and we didn't know how to get off, but we were just going along with the flow.
Love that. I mean, and to be where you're at now opening up a fourth location, uh, it is just a wild ride. And so
Yeah.
it seems like you guys were kind of, able to carry that momentum through COVID and then kind of come out of this and this new era of brewing. Uh, I think it's a different approach to growing a brand. So what is kind of your approach when you're deciding about opening a new location? Like what are key factors in your decision making process, whether it be location, um, how you're going to set the space up, what you're going to be serving?
Yeah, I think that's been the biggest focus change for me over the past few years is that the first, I would say, 7 years of us existing, I felt like I was more on the forefront of all of the creativity coming from the brand. Like we had great people working for us and they were responsible for a lot of it as well, but I was way more involved in that process. All of the recipe formulation I had a hand in some way or the other. And I think realizing like, hey, I have really, really talented people here. Maybe I need to like back off a little bit and give them room for their creativity to shine and still have it be under the Cerebral brand and make sure it meets our standards, but not necessarily be the one doing everything. And it was also necessary at the time because with COVID after that, like everybody was burned out, and I think it kind of took its toll on everybody in different ways. But we knew coming out of that we'd taken on some low interest debt that the government was offering. we were able to purchase the building that we're neighbors in Aurora. So um, with that, like, we realized it was going to be a fundamental shift in the business. We couldn't just take on debt and just not do anything differently. Otherwise, those bills would come due, and we wouldn't have anything to show for it, and it would probably spell the end of us. So we knew that it was really going to be another big change in our trajectory, and that's when I took on like just more of, I guess, the high level of everything, and tried to look at, where, to your point, like, where can we look for locations? Where can we look to extend the brand? What can we do from a pop-up perspective that's really going to get us some brand awareness? Because, despite traveling internationally, there's still people in Denver that don't know who we are. So how are we gonna take that on, and how are we gonna meet those people where they are? And so the Aurora space was like the key to it all, because it allowed us to own our future. Where at Congress Park, we have an amazing landlord that we've worked with over the past 11 years, and we have, another 10 plus years on the lease there. But a lot of our friends were not so fortunate with their landlords and their leases. So we knew we wanted to purchase the building if we could. So we were able to do that in Aurora, obviously far more affordable than Denver real estate. And with that, we were able to open the tap room there about a year or two later after we started production there. And the Highlands tap room just kind of fell into our lap. Honestly, we were looking, but not very aggressively. And we had a few people reach out on Instagram to say, "Hey, this brewery, Oasis, was there before. This brewery closed. Like, you should look at this location." And I was like, "I don't know if we want to look at, I don't know. We already have our hands full with Congress Park, with Aurora." And we looked at the building. We were like, "Oh man, we have to try for this." So, we did. We were able to get that location, opened it a little over a year ago. And that's really changed the tide for us, because we're also being hit with, as you're aware, like the Colfax construction at our original location is, I won't say decimated it, but it's like we're down year over year there, and it's the city of Denver's not helping us out. So we're like, the West Highland spot was really, really key, because it's such a walkable neighborhood and such a community center, and that's really what we look for. We're trying to recreate what we have in our Congress Park location over and over. And we have, Aurora might be less walkable than the other neighborhoods, but we still have a community there of people that love to come there as their hub and as their third space. And I know that term gets tossed around a lot, but really we look to create a space where you can just come and, I don't know, like, kick your feet up, relax, have a beer, hang out with your neighbors, your friends, your community, hosting events that tailor to that community and are really like what they're asking for and what they're looking for, while we do our best in giving our flexing our creative muscles to give them something that represents our belief on beer. So I don't really believe too much in the, like, you have to brew what everyone is asking for. We do that sometimes, but with certain beers, like when we made our first pumpkin beer last year, there's other beers that we do because we just believe in them, and that's what, like, really, I don't know, makes us who we are, is our worldview on beer, and like being able to push that to customers. So it's kind of a long-winded way of saying we're looking for really just community centers, and that's kind of with the Parker location that'll open next year. It's on their main street. It's super walkable. There's a lot of like really amazing businesses down there. We're going to be catty corner to Poulette, which is, James Beard bakery that is just fantastic. And there's so many other things in that neighborhood and that community that drew us there. But really, we're just looking to recreate that community aspect that we started in 2015 in Congress Park.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with, winning at home, connecting with your community. I think that's really the most important thing now. And I think that's a big difference for like what I think a focus of a brewery should be now versus 6, 7 years ago. Looking
Yeah.
inwards versus outwards.
I think we did a
And
lot of that, where we looked at, we were so focused on the traveling for festivals and traveling to all these cool locations, and then realizing like we're not doing the best job of like treating our Like let's focus on hospitality where we are. Like, sure, travel if we can to these things, but like let's focus on home and not
Yep.
focus on all of this other stuff.
Yeah. Well, I got to say, as far as like a brand goes and what you guys have created, it's definitely been an inspiration for us. It's like I remember being a young brewer and going into Congress Park and just seeing how the beer of the community and the taproom space, the environment, everything really comes together into like a cohesive brand, that you guys developed. So I just wanted to give you some kudos for that.
I appreciate that.
So we're going to take a short break for this message and then come back for more of this conversation with Sean Buchan of Cerebral.
Consistency matters, especially when scaling hop-forward brands. That's why Haas developed LupoCore, a next-generation pellet solution designed to provide superior finished beer character alongside dependable brewhouse performance. By combining enhanced pellet technology with carefully selected Sensory Plus hops, LupoCore helps brewers achieve reliable aroma expression and reduce process loss from batch to batch. It's a seamless upgrade for breweries looking to improve hop quality while maintaining operational simplicity. Learn more at lupohops.com.
Tim here again from Berkeley Yeast. Our Tropics yeast is based on a London ale strain, but we added a new gene to its genome that codes for a unique thiol-releasing enzyme. The enzyme converts the precursors in barley to free thiols that smell and taste like passion fruit and grapefruit. It's super clean. No off-flavors like burnt rubber or other sulfurous notes, just tropical aromatics. You don't have to do anything unusual either, like mash hopping. Just pitch dry Tropics and supercharge your hazy IPA.
Malt Europe has long been a pillar of North American malting, and they're growing to meet the needs of the modern brewer. Their brand new warehouse expansion at the Winona, Minnesota Malt House marks a new chapter in their commitment to service and reliability. With increased capacity and optimized logistics at the Winona hub, Malt Europe is delivering the quality you expect with the speed you need. Discover the Malt Europe difference at malteuropemaltingco.com.
What if your tanks could tell you everything? Not just where gravity is, but why your fermentation is behaving the way it is. That's System, one platform that helps you impact your process, improve your product, and increase your profit, batch after batch. The System, which includes the patent-pending Senos M3 in-tank sensor, is the only complete solution for comprehensive fermentation intelligence and management. Built for breweries of every size. Visit senos.com. That's SENNOS.com.
Welcome back. So we'll transition a little bit. Last time I was over, we were brewing a collab, and kind of first thing I noticed, you had a bunch of different people sitting around, and everyone was kind of playing around with a program that you developed utilizing AI. I think it's a hot topic right now. But do you think that AI has a future in this industry? And if so, how have you been using it as a tool for Cerebral?
I knew AI would come up. Somehow I was walking my dog this morning thinking, what is he going to ask me? And I knew AI would come up. I don't know. I mean, I think it has a future in the brewing industry, whether it's positive or negative, I don't know yet. And I think where we've been focused, and specifically me at Cerebral, is really focusing on using it to a benefit for a small business. I think everything about AI is, in terms of how it was created, isn't like so inherently flawed, but it's like one of those inevitabilities in my mind where it's here, and I can put my head in the sand and not use it, or I can use something to hopefully better my business for my employees and for their livelihoods. And what I'm trying not to do is the everything that you see on corporate memes of people expecting more out of people because they have AI. I think it really just comes down to, like, I've been using it more on the coding perspective, and I have no coding experience whatsoever. But we've been able to create some software that just works for us better than the stuff that we've been paying thousands of dollars for a year. And I won't name them, but there's brewery management softwares and all of these like bottle release software, all of them out there. They don't take feedback. They don't build a software for you. They build it for a mass audience. And now we finally have the tools to say, okay, I want to build what works for us. And that's where we're at, where we're really just like, looking at anything that can tie all of the information and all of the people we have working on projects. We're still a small company, But with spread between locations, it's easy to just have uh, like information spread that's wrong. Like you have like, okay, this releases this date, and then somebody else mixes it up because it's in a different spreadsheet labeled differently, and then all of a sudden, it doesn't work as intended. So we're trying to just centralize everything and use AI for that. I do think there's, you know, luckily, brewing is very physical and hands-on, and I think that makers of things will always have a place and are more safe from AI. But I also don't want to be ignorant enough to say that it couldn't just automate our entire brew house. I think you put the right sensors and flow meters, and you have a bunch of more actuating valves, and you could just automate the brew day. But I'm hopeful that that isn't something that any craft brewery ever really gets into, because I think you'd have to lose that word craft. I don't know what that would even mean at that point.
Yeah, it's almost like it's the decision making process that makes it craft, and
Yeah,
just those little steps along the way, especially kind of harkening back to earlier, in the cellar. It's like really that's where the beer's made, and there's so many small, finite details in those processes. But yeah, in general,
yeah,
people should share their API and
yeah.
free up
Amen.
information. Just so
Yeah, I think the hopefully that's dead, but the ability that you pay for a software and you have to pay extra to get access to your own data. I think that's I don't know if revolution is the right word, but it's kind of the revolution we're going through right now, where I feel like if I've been paying you for my software services for the past 5 years or whatever it is, like that's my data. I should be able to have that. Luckily, there's workarounds, but yeah,
yep,
API keys.
amen to that. So moving on from AI, everyone's favorite topic. Let's go back to stouts for a little bit. What's your approach to building stouts, specifically for barrel aging? Has
Yeah.
that changed from when you did that release year two to what Monsters looks like now?
Yeah. And I hate to go back, but I'm going to give one disclaimer I didn't mention before. We do not use AI for art at all.
No,
So,
no, they do not. I can
no,
I can vouch for that. You have an
just,
amazing
just
artist on
because
staff.
I didn't talk about that. It's just for coding things. That's really all we're doing. So back to Stout, we've changed so much over the past 10 years or 11 years. And most of it has been really built on time and barrel is the biggest variable that we've tweaked, and then that has changed our approach to everything that we've brewed. So when we first released Monsters, it was 10 months in barrels because I was like, I need this tastes good. I need to release it. It's the right time to release it. I have no idea if it's going to get better or worse. And then batch two, um, I should know this off the top of my head, but it was either 12 or 18 months. And then it kind of hung around that 18-month mark for a little bit. And then it started increasing incrementally. And now I would say our average is close to like 30 to 36 months. And that really has significant impacts on what the end result is if you don't adjust the beer. So we do prolonged boil. We've always done like an 8-hour boil. We've extended that to 24 hours before in triple mash monsters that we've done. And really just the amount of adjuncts in combination with those Maillard reactions is what we've been playing with lately. We also take a pretty intensely bitter approach to barrel aged stout when we brew it, knowing that it's going to be in barrel for 3, sometimes 4 years. We're hitting that with you know predicted IBUs of somewhere around like 75 to 85 IBUs. And we did some initial testing, and obviously it's not going to test at that level, but we're hitting it with like just a lot of first word hops, and doing some 90-minute and really just building in a lot of structure because you get a lot of sweetness in barrel aged stouts. And one thing I love about Colorado is we have a really diverse brewing scene in really all styles, because I would argue we don't really have um, anything that is, maybe besides Odell IPA, that is like true core and tenet to Colorado and something we can claim as a style. So you see everything. Like you see people doing hazy IPA, West Coast IPA, but everybody does everything. And we're also a state of a lot of transplants. So think you see that in the beer. And we have other brewers in Colorado, including yourself, making like fantastic examples of barrel aged beer, but everybody's going about it differently. And we've always had our view on it is really looking for oak, and we're using the stout as like an exploration vessel to get the most out of the barrel that we choose, instead of the opposite, where we're just trying to highlight the beer and a little bit of bourbon or a little bit of vanillin. We're looking to draw everything we can out of these incredibly unique barrels that we can. And we're looking for not only just that toasted oak profile, but like layers of lignins and vanillins and things that you can start to get like cookie dough and coconut and all these beautiful flavors out of it, while also extracting a little bit of that spirit that makes that one unique. And so we focused on single origin varieties for a while, where we were just doing, like here be monsters in this unique bourbon. And we've done some single barrel expressions through our Endeavor membership, and also just bigger blends. And that's where we get to have the most fun, is really like our annual monsters release that's now numbered. We just released batch 7. So it'll be batch 8 this year that we work on blending. And that way we get to take, some barrels that are maybe a little bit more full and round and sweet. And then we get to take some that aged a little bit longer, or presenting with a little bit more tannic quality, that are going to cut that sweetness. And then we can present like this one's bringing a really great bourbon character, and blend in multiple elements down to sometimes like 2 to 3 gallons of that beer, and not always full barrels. Given where that style's going, we're releasing less and less of it every year, while still making it a big part of what we do. But that way we can still achieve that complex blending approach without, ending up with a huge volume that we can't always sell.
Absolutely. So like when you're going through and trying to select barrels, what's important to you? I mean, obviously you want them to be fresh and wet, but what else sticks out to you as you're going through that selection process?
Yeah, I'd say even them being fresh and wet isn't as important to me as what spirit was in that and how long it was aged. So, because we've done, as our team can attest, I have a tendency to over purchase barrels at times. When I see something I want, I just buy a bunch of them. That may have just happened last week. So then we sit on some of them. Yeah, I haven't told Sam yet, but he'll find out today. So we buy barrels ahead of time, typically, just because I want to have them prepped and kind of recoopered. And we'll search for our real sweet spot is that like 8 to 12 year range for a bourbon. We've gotten away with less. And I think rye whiskey in particular, you can get away with a little bit less. But that 8 to 12 year really gives you that sweet spot of like you're getting everything that you want, where you're getting bourbon character, you're getting oak, but you're also not just getting like, we always, when we talk about it to our members, talk about it like the devil share commercials, where it's like, where you're going to lose a lot of bourbon over time. If you we've had the fortune to work with some 23-year Pappy barrels, but I've got to imagine that bourbon was not touching about 80 to 85% of that oak for the last few years of that barrel's life. So you're just getting oak and char, and you're not getting nearly enough spirit. But on the other end, when you're dealing with younger barrels, you're getting so much heat and so much spirit, but you're not really getting developed or nuanced oak. So that 8 to 12 year, just because 12 isn't like a super common year to see, like we'll kind of go 8 to 15. I look for like longer age statements on bourbon, partly because it works really well from a marketing perspective when you go to sell the product, and partly because it's going to be a more nuanced beer coming out of that in general than it is out of a younger barrel. So we target a lot of that. Wheated bourbon barrels work really beautifully for our base beer. I cannot describe why, but I think based on the reaction We use a lot of crystal malts in Monsters and other brands that we have. We're now at like probably 4 to 5 different base recipes that sit in barrels that we can blend with, and then little nuanced variables within those. But what we see out of some wheated bourbon is just this cool, jammy blackberry raspberry character that shows up. And it doesn't show up out of any other, just like a base bourbon or rye whiskey. We don't see the same thing, but it does work really well in wheated bourbon. So we tend to lean on those. But honestly, whatever's interesting at the time, because I'm pretty ADHD like that. It's going to be whatever one has my fixation for that moment. We're going to roll with.
Well, I like the approach is, instead of having a beer sitting in tanks and then going back and looking for something to stick it in, it's like, having those barrels in house, recoupering them. I think that's a really good approach. It's more purposeful in that way, I feel, instead of just, kind of just looking for what you can find. What does that recoupering process look like for you guys?
It really depends. Like sometimes they're just good. We get them in fresh. If we're brewing one soon, it's going to go right in. We don't have to do anything for it other than CO2 purge and then fill. But if it's been around a little bit, we've just got the coopering tools where we're just going to pour water on both heads. So we're going to flip it, do 1 or 2 days soak with HLT water on that head, flip it, do the other side, and then we're just coopering the rings back down, and that's usually enough. And I think if you leave a barrel for a month or two in our climate, being as low humidity as it is, you're going to have to recuperate, but it's going to be fine. Any longer than that, and I would worry about some microbial risk if you get to some gaps in the oak and that type of stuff. But in general, we're filling them within, I'd say, 3 months is the 1 to 2 months is the goal, and then if it extends to 3 months, we're still probably fine, but it's just a little bit more work.
Cool. Final gravities stout, has that been variable as well over the years for you guys? I know there's a general trend of things being dialed back,
Mhm.
particularly in barrel aged stout. Are you guys doing that as well, would you say?
Not really, because we haven't adjusted ours in recent years, but we did in the years when we were really extending our age. I think that was another really big driving factor in making it last longer, was that we had to take that gravity up. So what may have started as a 10 to 11 Plato monsters for batch one, then worked its way up to, at one point, the peak was probably about 18 Plato, is that we were like what we were targeting. I still really like that um, level for us, and I think we've now come down and we're sitting. We don't brew it as often anymore, but when we do, it's typically in that 15 and a half to 17 range. And I think that's a nice spot for it because it allows us to age intently and get really a lot of the flavors that we're looking for out of the oak without it ending and being overtly sweet. But that also comes with like the bitterness that we layer in. Like the word I use with our team probably too much is structure, and I want it to be structured. I want it to that. I mean, you're going to have that wash of sweet is going to come in to the mid palate, where it's typically like, we always describe it as some incredibly arbitrary percent cacao that might not exist. So, it's like, okay, the 87% cacao is like what we're getting right now, meaning like, how bitter is this chocolate? Sometimes that ranges into like that dry, like Ghirardelli brownie batter or brownie mix, where you're getting like the dry chocolate, or you're just getting pure dark chocolate out of the beer. But you get that sweet mid palate, you're getting chocolate, you're getting roast, you're getting espresso to some degree. I want a little bit of vanilla to creep in on the end, some of the sweeter notes from the barrel. Uh, and then I want that oak to just kind of dry the palate out so that you want to take another sip. I think barrel aged stouts that end sweet on sweet, just like, they're not appealing to me at all. And I want it to do what we drive for in West Coast IPA. It's just a very different approach to it. It's going to lift your palate and make you want to go back, instead of just like flabby and flat flavors that just kind of hang out.
Yeah. Kind of with that said, HSA, hop saturated ale, is it here to stay?
Well, we've made one so far. And you know, it was obviously with you all. Dope Trait turned out fantastic. Like that was such a fun project to work on with you all. I don't know, sitting down, it's like one of the most fun things right now is to sit down and craft something that you've just never done before. Like we could
Mhm.
talk right now about like let's make a barrel aged stout. Not that that wouldn't be exciting, but we've done it, so we kind of have at that point the creative process is how do you adapt two different interpretations on that, which is fun, but there's something even more fun to like, who knows what the fuck's going to happen when we do this
Yep.
to this level. And, you know, if we're talking about Dope Trait, again, because it's our only released example of this so far, like that was the most intensely hopped beer we've ever put out in terms of like pounds per barrel factoring in hop products. And outside of uh accidental quad dry hop beer we did when we were like 4 years old, where it was 12 and a half pounds per barrel in the dry hop alone, like that beer aside, this was everything we wanted it to be. But we also got to layer in so many new hop products that it wasn't just T90s. And while the yield was still bad, it wasn't, you know, abysmal. But I think it's a really fun example of the style where, you know, we've been focusing so much on our approach to uh, hazy IPA in that like 6 to 8% range, and also that renewed focus on West Coast IPA, that this was just such a fun diversion where we got to say, like, let's just make one of the most intensely saturated things we've ever experienced. You know, not that we hadn't had too many of these that are being done by other people. So I don't know. Yeah, love to hear your thoughts on like what what the process was like from your perspective, and what you guys are like if you're taking any of that and going to be playing with some of those same processes.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's like I've actually taken some of the, especially like in the boil, boiling with nitrogen being fed through those low boil times. I think there's some specific process uh, tools that you can kind of utilize in creating these beers. Um, I think they're going to be sticking around for a while. It's like we're kind of talking about driving it up a little bit and putting it in that vein of an HSA, saturated ale, because I do think it is vastly different than hazy double IPA or hazy triple IPA because of just that intensity. But I think similar to like barrel aged stout, it's I like the term structure because I think when you're in those states of levels of intensity, you have to like think about the structure and how all these things are going to stitch themselves together, even with them being so loud and vibrant. Um, so I think it's yeah, it's definitely a fun road to be going down, uh, especially with all the new hop products. We kind of got into it. Me and Alyssa got into it, but there's so much new
Yeah.
out there right now, and so much to explore in that space. So I think it's a good vessel in order to explore some new techniques and products for sure.
Yeah, it's fun too, even just thinking about, while very, very different, it's like the same that we're trying with our West Coast IPAs, where we're just trying to get them to be as pale as possible right now. And, you know,
Hmm.
we're pulling out all of the color, and then you do that in a hazy IPA, and you're like, well, what does that look like? And then you look at, yeah, it's a super low color Pilsner malt, whether that's Gambrinus or To Thee, now the pale white wheat layering in, I forget exactly where we were at on oat quantity on that one, but it was like what, 40% total adjuncts.
Yeah, I think
And
we're in that range.
just taking that, and then the simmer boil where you're lowering Maillard reactions. We did that. The nitrogen you talked about was just something that we've luckily had on the system since we bought it. It was designed for kettle sours, and we don't do kettle sours anymore. So we were like, well, what can we use this for? And our engineer that helped us with the system was actually pitching us on doing simmer boils in all beers, and some research that came out of, I think it was Carlsberg or maybe Heineken, one of the big guys, on how they can simmer boil and reduce just total, you know, energy requirements that go into a beer to save on, you know, natural gas and electricity and everything. But then when we related to this, we're like, well, we need a way to drive out the DMS precursors. And like,
Hmm.
this is the way that we've done it. And it's worked really well on a very different style of IPA that we've been doing in the hazy perspective, but then to bring it in with this one was like really, yeah, it was fun to bring in something that's so pale and unassuming. And then you take that first sip and it is just like hitting you with so many layers of cryo and, T90s, and the new YCH 805 was a big part of
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely
Yeah.
excited to play around with that 805 a little bit more. I
Yeah.
think there's
Yeah.
something there.
Hmm. They know what they're doing.
So yeah, oh yeah. So what individuals or what breweries would be on your Brewers Mount Rushmore? Could be one, could be a few.
That's a good question. I think um, it really depends on the style that we're really fixated on at the moment. But I would say, like, as a brand, the ones that I uh, really like find myself singular thinking about is really like Freem for us in Portland has been just such a model example of like quality at scale. And, not that we're looking to scale anywhere close to that. Like we're very comfortable in our about 5,500 to 6,000 barrels a year range. But they just have done such a good job. You do the tour there, everything is just so clean and crisp and done with intention. So I also just really appreciate their branding. Oxbow is like another one for me that on the other side of the country um, just does like such a great job at just like, this is who we are, this is the beer we make. And uh, I love that, their intention to low ABV farmhouse styles, things that maybe you don't maybe always reach for or find, but they're just so good. Locally, it would be, I think Cannonball's been up there for I think almost everybody in the state. It's just like the model
Yeah.
of how to make hoppy beer well in basically every style. They obviously do
Yeah.
things far outside of hoppy beer. But just what Hutch and his team have accomplished there is like just so incredible. Like it's the model of consistency at the highest level. I was just listening to their brewer to brewer earlier this morning, so they're also a friend of mine. But I don't know, it's fun. Like those are the more established ones. But I think where it's the most fun in the market right now is like who's coming up now, like you guys, like who's doing things that are pushing everyone else. And we're old now. We've been at this we're 10 and a half years old. And it's easy to get caught up in uh not that we ever try to just make the same beer. We're always trying to push ourselves, but then it takes people coming in and like doing new things where you're like, oh shit, like I need to talk to them about this. I need to like
Yeah.
we need to work with them on something and learn something from them. So I think that's where that's the most fun right now. And I'm hopeful that the Colorado market continues to see that because the BA data came out and we're still seeing openings. I think locally, I haven't seen as many recently. I think Colorado is very focused on mergers and acquisitions in a very negative sense in my mind,
Mhm.
where things just seem to be, we're losing some really, really, truly great brands to some brands that are not uh, well intentioned and not doing things the right way. But underneath that, I'm hopeful that some of the turnover we see will produce, more milieus, and like I'll get to see you guys continue to succeed and like grow and do things that are going to make me think like, what the hell? Why have I not thought of this?
Well, I appreciate that. It is a absolute pleasure to call you a friend and neighbor. Thank you for being here today. I think it was a wonderful conversation. Is there anything you'd like to plug? Share the socials.
Yeah, we're just Cerebral Brewing on all the things that we use. But I appreciate the time. It's always great to talk to you. So thanks for having me.
Likewise. Thank you, Sean. Sean will be back on the next episode of this show as the host, having a conversation with a brewer of his choosing. This will be on air next week, so make sure you tune in for that. Visit allaboutbeer.com and follow along on social media at allaboutbeer. To support journalism in the beer space, check out allaboutbeer.com/support. I am Rob Bessett of Milieu Fermentation Company. Thank you for listening to the Brewer to Brewer podcast.
What if your tanks could tell you everything? Not just where gravity is, but why your fermentation is behaving the way it is. That's SenoSystem, one platform that helps you impact your process, improve your product, and increase your profit, batch after batch. The SenoSystem, which includes the patent-pending Senos M3 in-tank sensor, is the only complete solution for comprehensive fermentation intelligence and management. Built for breweries of every size. Visit senos.com. That's SENNOS.com.
Today's brewers need hops that perform consistently, from pilot scale to full production. LupoCore was engineered to meet that challenge, delivering enhanced sensory performance, reliable dosing, and scalable brewing efficiency in an easy-to-use T90 format. Backed by Haas innovation and sensory expertise, LupoCore helps breweries create impactful hop character with confidence and control. Reach out to your Haas Sales Representative or visit lupohops.com for more information.
Tim here again from Berkeley Yeast. My favorite part about Tropics in a dried format is that it makes it easy to use Tropics more like an ingredient than a yeast strain. It's a great tool for turning tropical flavors up or down. Tropics on its own makes big notes of passion fruit and grapefruit, which is great for a lot of recipes, but sometimes you want to dial that thiol character down. Easy. You can just co-pitch at different rates with your house strain. If you want to dial it up, especially if you're using a pretty aggressive hop bill, then just add Tropics Boost. It's pure precursors dissolved in water and ethanol. Go to berkeleyyeast.com to find out how to turn the thiol dial to exactly where you want it.
Malt Europe has long been a pillar of North American malting, and they're growing to meet the needs of the modern brewer. Their brand new warehouse expansion at the Winona, Minnesota Malt House marks a new chapter in their commitment to service and reliability. With increased capacity and optimized logistics at the Winona hub, Malt Europe is delivering the quality you expect with the speed you need. Discover the Malt Europe difference at malteuropemaltingco.com.